I felt loyal to my work in a sense, but I didn't feel loyal to companies where I would just stay there out of a sense of, oh, well, they took a chance on me, and tell myself this story like so many people do, that you will hurt someone by leaving. So I got really good at being professionally selfish in a way that I think should be normalized. It's scary. I don't even try to sugarcoat it. It is really scary to ask for what you're worth, but the payoff is always great. And then, it's worth the risk. You just kind of have to stick to your guns in that way. And then being willing to pursue higher earnings unapologetically. So my ability to quit, I say I quit my way rich, and I really mean that. I quit 6 or 7 times in 10 years, and I did it thoughtfully with intention. I did not burn bridges. I didn't burn a single bridge, okay? Success happens when you are willing to push yourself out of your comfort zone and do the scary thing. Hey, this is Mandi Woodruff-Santos. You may know me as Mandi Money, and you are listening to Dreams and Drive.
Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 356 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. I am super excited for you all to hear today's throwback episode. We are throwing it back to episode 301 with Mandi Woodruff-Santos, and we're going to be talking about, on that episode, we actually talked about how to achieve the career and salary reality you want. So I am strategically placing this episode first because, I interviewed Mandi last year, and it was just so cool to hear her story about how she really went from struggling to thriving, and now she's a full-time entrepreneur, but also in her corporate career days, how she was really able to build her salary ceiling. And I think that's something that a lot of us, especially mid-level, entry-level dream drivers, if we're still in the corporate world, we sometimes forget just how much leverage we have and how to really not manipulate, but how to really flex that leverage and really get these salaries and career positions that we want. So I feel like Mandi's story is one that is super helpful, always helpful, and I just think she's super dope. And then following this episode 357, which will be released in a few days, is I just want to give you guys an update on my own life and the promotion that I recently got at Paramount and just how I feel about this in relation to dream driving. So I feel like this is going to be a great companion episode. Listen to this one again first, and then tune back in for episode 357, where I'll just be giving you a little bit more details about some great news that I had in my own personal life. So let's dive into hearing a little bit more about Mandi, and then we're going to jump into her interview. So let me say a little bit more about Mandi. She's an inclusive wealth building advocate, career expert, and the co-host of the popular podcast Brown Ambition. Mandi's a regular contributor to Yahoo Finance Live, and her personal finance and career advice has also been featured on the Dr. Phil Show, the New York Times, CNBC, CNN, Business Insider, Essence, Teen Vogue, U.S. News and World Report, and more. And Mandi manages her own multimedia brand, offering financial and career guidance across many platforms. She recently published her free online guide called The Just Quit Toolkit, which has helped teach more than 2,000 people how to quit their way rich. And that is what we're going to talk about on this week's episode, right? We're going to talk about this whole idea of how you can quit your way rich, and really why it's okay to be professionally selfish, right? Mandi's going to share her dream driving journey and her own keys to success. We're going to be talking about things like how to figure out your worth, why we need to be willing to pursue higher earnings unapologetically. And sometimes, we can trick ourselves into settling, and what to do if you find yourself in that spot. And Mandi makes talking about money something that isn't scary, right? Talking about building your career, talking about how we can set ourselves up for success financially, and how she was able to do that while even working a 9-to-5 and now as an entrepreneur. So put on your seatbelts and get ready for today's ride. As always, if you enjoy this episode, please make sure that you're following us across social media. You can find us across the board at Dreams and Drive, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're mostly on Instagram, so make sure to follow us there. Post this to your Instagram story. Share that you're listening to Mandi Money on Dreams and Drive. And I really just would appreciate you guys helping to spread the word about this episode and the entire platform in general. I really do appreciate it. All right, let's get into this conversation with Mandi. I'm promising you guys, this is one that you guys are going to take so much away from. Let's hear from Mandi.
Hey, fellow mama. How are you?
Yes, I am good. Super excited to be able to have you on the show. And it's funny because we actually met at a mutual friend's birthday party for her son. And we found out that you had a podcast, I had a podcast, and we both have young sons,
Yep.
toddlers, beautiful little boys. And it's really just amazing to have you here today.
I love that. And you know what was funny is, of course, when you have toddlers running around, you don't get to talk to each other as much as you want. So I just kept thinking about you. But then, like, my son dragged me somewhere else and it was like a huge party. And I don't even know if I got to say goodbye, but your son was so adorable. And I really enjoyed meeting you. So when you invited me, I was like, hells yes.
So it's funny because I think you were at the table and somebody else was talking about podcasts and you just like casually mentioned yours. And then my ears perked up. I was like, Brown Ambition with what? Like, wait, you're Mandy? You know how you like then realize, oh, that's the voice behind a show that I've listened to before. So it was a really cool moment for me. I love to start interviews going back in time though, and just talking about or thinking about who we were as children. I think it's really important to kind of reflect on the young us and where we are now.
Okay.
So tell me, Mandy,
Got it.
what was inspiring you as a child? Like, what was the young Mandy up to? What were your dreams as a child?
I was such an imaginative child. I was in my head all the time. I wasn't doing much outwardly. I was not like into sports or I love to play outside, but I was a lot of times just reading books and daydreaming and writing plays in my bedroom. So I think what always inspired me was storytelling. And I had a kind of tumultuous childhood. I mean, it was for periods of time tumultuous. So for me, it was always about escaping into my own imagination and creating stories and always imagining myself as like some badass superhero, saving the day. And that's what really drove me. I just love telling stories. And if I could go back and give that little girl a big old squeeze and just tell her, you just go ahead and be your quiet self reading your books. It's okay. Mm-hmm. You don't got to know how to play kickball. It's fine. That's what I would tell her.
Did you have a big dream as a kid?
Yeah, my dream was to be a children's book writer. I remember that as vividly as like one of the, like telling I don't know, it was in elementary school, telling a teacher what I wanted to be. And I wanted to be a children's book author. That was my dream. I'm sort of kind of there.
Yeah, we really are. Like, you still are writing, right? Imaginative and all that stuff. And you ended up going to college and you studied journalism. Mm-hmm. Did you think, like, was the goal then like, all right, maybe I'll pursue writing, or this is just a passion of mine, I'm just going to continue it in college? Like, what was your game plan, or the game plan you thought you had? Because I love when you think back about college and you think, oh, I'm going to be this, I'm going to do that, right? And things just kind of go astray sometimes. So how did that pan out for you?
Yeah, I mean, writing was all I really knew how to do. It was my one talent. So I was always thinking, how can I turn this into a career? And for me, reading teen magazines was just my favorite pastime when I was in high school. And I was like, I was that person on the school newspaper writing stories. And I remember I created a newsletter just on Word doc. I created a newsletter for my AP English class, and it was like a satire newsletter, and I would just do that for fun. So for me, going into news and journalism, it just made a natural connection for me to make. And I was lucky enough to have a school in my state. So going into a state school, University of Georgia, that had a great journalism program. And I was one of those college grads. I went in knowing what I wanted to do. I did it. And then I got a job in it. So I feel really fortunate because I was always really clear on that path I was taking.
Well, that's amazing. I want to push you though on something you said. And maybe it's something you didn't realize when you were younger, right? But you said you only had that one talent, which was writing. But looking back at younger Mandy, what were your other talents that you probably didn't even know were a talent or a skill set or like something in your genius zone that you now realize now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, up until that point through college, it was writing. That was what I wanted to do. But through my career, I ended up having to force myself to acquire new skills that I had never imagined. When I was in journalism school, there were the print kids who were in the newspaper and magazine classes. And then there was the broadcast and radio kids who were over there in the studio. And I always assumed like, oh, if you want to be on TV, you're going to go over there. But if you want just a job where you're just writing all day, you want to be on the print side. And once I got into my career, it became an act of survival for me, for longevity in my career, to pivot, or not to pivot, but to get out of my comfort zone and start doing on-camera stuff, start learning how to write scripts, start learning how to edit video. Podcasting for me was not something that I learned at all in college. That's something that the radio kids probably learned how to edit audio and, produce for audio journalism and all of that. So I really was good early in my career, recognizing that, okay, your talent is writing, but you just haven't been tested. You haven't proven that you can do other things yet. And I can say now, like over 10 years later, I have way more skills than writing. I'm a podcaster. I'm an editor. I can do on camera. I can do audio. Like there's so many things I can do. And it's because, I pushed myself.
I love that. Let's go back to your early days, right? The first job out of college. Where did you land? And how did it feel to say, all right, like I had this dream of mine. I went to school for it. Now I'm actually real life working in the business. Was it a shock? Was it what you imagined?
Well, it was 2009. So it was the recession and I was a journalism grad, basically moving into not a dying industry, but a very like in the middle of a giant transition, like a seismic shift kind of industry. And jobs were just dying. They were laying off so many journalists. And I was lucky enough to land a job at a local newspaper after college, but I ended up turning it down because after 4 years, and I did everything by the book in college. I did it in 4 years. I got my good GPA and I worked 2 part-time jobs. So I was kind of working my way, paying my rent. I didn't want to take out student loans and I was just tired after 4 years. And I'm really proud of myself that I recognized I needed a break and I didn't want to go right into a cubicle and be tied to a 9-to-5. So I turned down that job and actually traveled through South America for 4 months after college. And when I came back, I got that same job actually. So, it came back to me. They were still looking. And so I came back, got that job. And then within like 2 weeks of starting that job, I got a job opportunity in New York, working at a magazine called Reader's Digest. And that was my first big girl quit. That was my first like, oh crap, I'm going to have to quit this job. And by the way, I've only been in this job for 2 weeks and I was so anxious.
2 weeks?
Yes. So 2 weeks into that job, I got the email from a former colleague of mine because I had interned at Reader's Digest in college. And I guess I made a good impression and they were hiring and they reached out to me and I did the interview. And then it was like a 2-week process. So a month after I started that newspaper job, I had a job offer from a magazine in New York, and Atlanta is hot shit now. Like that's where I'm from. Everyone wants to be in Atlanta. There's all these exciting new industries there and all that kind of stuff, but it was not hot shit in 2009. Okay. It was not a thriving media, entertainment hub. So New York was where it was at, so I knew if I wanted a long career in journalism, New York made a lot of sense. And yeah, I quit that job a month later after starting. No, I was just going to say it was fine. I didn't die. And, I'm really glad that I did it.
It's funny because I was just watching the Kanye West documentary last week, right? And there was a point in his career where he had to move to New York, right? And he was like, it was one of the best things. It was uncomfortable, but he knew that if he wanted to like further and chase the opportunity, he had to make that move. And I think a lot of us sometimes location changes. And this can kind of be aligned with job changing eventually, right? Like it is changing locations in a way. How do you think that physical shift from like going from everywhere you've known, Atlanta, Georgia, you went to school in Georgia, right? And now moving to New York, what was like the mindset that you think you were starting to cultivate by this initial location change?
Ooh, that success happens when you are willing to push yourself out of your comfort zone and do the scary thing. That was such an important mindset for me that I actually started developing when I started to travel. I did a couple of trips. Like my first time traveling alone on a plane was in college. I think I was a freshman and I did a week-long spring break after Hurricane Katrina. We went to New Orleans and Mississippi and we helped rebuild. And that was my first time, like getting on a plane, leaving my comfort zone with a bunch of strangers. And I had an incredible experience. And then I traveled to Argentina. It wasn't like a study abroad trip, but some friends of mine put together like a volunteer trip to Argentina. And that was my freshman year. And that summer I spent 8 weeks in Argentina, like having no idea how to travel. Like I remember packing my suitcase and of course it's summer in Georgia. So it's like 100 degrees. Argentina is the other side of the world. That's how weather works. It's opposite over there. So when I got there, it was really cold and I'm like, oh crap, what am I doing? But the more I traveled, and like I said, I traveled after college too. I went alone and I traveled through Chile and Argentina. So for me, New York was another adventure. And I had already proven, like, all that traveling I had did by myself, especially, I proved that you could throw me anywhere and I was going to be okay. And that resiliency and that like knowledge and trust in myself, it gave me the strength of mind, and like it helped me make that leap of faith to move. So I would say if you're feeling afraid to go outside your comfort zone, like leave your hometown, or just do it in small ways. You know, I started by going to a different state. I didn't immediately go to a huge city. You don't have to necessarily sell everything and move to South America like I did, but just start pushing yourself slowly but surely to do new things, because that is where the magic happens, I think.
Whether you're searching for the latest sneaker drop, that iconic handbag, a timeless watch, or your next piece of classic jewelry, eBay authenticators are there verifying every detail of your purchase. Yep, we're talking each inch, stitch, tick, facet, and clasp that make the piece you're searching for worthy of your collection. eBay authenticators are experts in their craft, true connoisseurs, and as leaders in their fields, they're making sure your items always arrive as authentic as your style. So go ahead, get that piece you've always wanted, and leave it up to the meticulous eyes of an eBay authenticator to make sure that watch movement is original, that glimmer is real gold, that rare sneaker is legit, or that handbag is really made of genuine leather, and never get faked over again. In a world full of fakes, it's time to get real with eBay Authenticity Guarantee. Everyone deserves real. Visit ebay.com for terms. Ladies, we say period a lot, but do we ever talk about periods, aka our menstrual cycle? So I'm busy, I'm active, I'm always on the go, and sometimes pads just don't do it for me. I want to be able to move around and just feel, free. And here's the thing, a lot of us are scared of tampons and we don't have to be. So let me tell you why. When inserted properly, tampons shouldn't hurt. Like a pad, Tampax can absorb even your heavy flow and give you an up to 100% leak-free experience you can't see or feel. And growing up in our communities as a teen, I remember there being this whole stigma and taboo around girls who used tampons versus girls who didn't. So I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. Now, as a 30-something-year-old, I'm like, no, let's talk about it. Tampax has me covered. Chill mode, check. Supermom mode, check. On the go mode, check. Tampax is always there for the different types of days I have. There is no right or wrong way to manage your period. I'm just saying, mix it up sometimes and try Tampax.
I love that. So, you landed in New York and you were starting to build, I guess, Mandi Woodruff at this time, right? Like you were starting to build your, your professional repertoire, right? Working at companies like Yahoo, you worked at Business Insider. Did you feel at this time that you were making you were becoming a boss? And I say that because did you ever have any inkling that, hey, maybe one day I don't want to work for somebody right now? But what were your feelings as an employee of these huge companies, very successful companies?
Yeah. I mean, the fact that I turned down a job after college and traveled instead, I already had that. I didn't know what to call it then, but that entrepreneurial spirit, that I want to control my own destiny spirit, I had it. I get that from my dad. And, I'm really grateful for it. So what I found I chafed at in corporate culture was having managers who really micromanaged me. And I was lucky enough to have some jobs where that wasn't the case, but then I was unlucky enough to have a couple of particularly bad micromanagers. I really thrived. And I'm not saying at all that there's not wonderful companies where you can be entrepreneurial and have autonomy. And, people like me can't excel there because I have excelled in those places, but you have to find the right fit for yourself. But I always knew that I wanted to be at a place that would allow me to do different things and not stay in one box. And when I felt like I was starting to be, I would hit those brick walls when I wanted to try different things, then I would typically move on. And I did not have any big visions or goals of working for myself. That kind of happened accidentally. this earlier this year, but I'm thriving and I love it. But yeah, you can definitely find that for yourself in a 9 to 5 as well. You just have to kind of be really picky and know what you want.
Ooh, let's talk about that, right? Because I think, all right, thriving in a 9 to 5 is something that, a lot of us listeners on the show, a lot of listeners to Dream Drivers, they may not be the dream driver that is going to start their own business, right? But they may be really entrepreneurial, right? They might have a lot of interest and want to grow these interests, grow this within a company. Also, entrepreneurship is hard, right? Like I went back to working a 9 to 5 after working for myself for 2 to 3 years. I had a baby. Like it made sense for me at the time, right? So we're not knocking a 9 to 5 hustle, but what were you finding about the, what's the word? Financial inequity, especially for being a woman of color, right? And what it meant. And you have this, you've quit your way to success in a way, right? You quit your job in order to make more money, right? And I think a lot of us are navigating that. So when did you start to realize that, hey, I don't have to stay here and I could be making a lot more somewhere else, doing what I love and also getting better at it?
Yeah. Well, quitting that newspaper job, and I increased my salary from like 31,000 to 45,000 in just that one job jump. I mean, granted, $31,000 in Georgia and $45,000 in New York is probably about $31,000 in Georgia. But anyway, I was making moves, and then I was actually laid off. So that job that I moved to New York from, 3 months later, they laid me off. Yeah. I told you magazine was not it in 2009, 2010. So falling on my butt in that way, that was like the message I got was, okay, you're disposable. So when it came to making career choices for myself, I decided to put myself first. And it was a really good lesson for me to learn. So I didn't really I felt loyal to my work in a sense, but I didn't feel loyal to companies where I would just stay there out of a sense of, oh, well, they took a chance on me, and tell myself this story like so many people do, that you will hurt someone by leaving. So I got really good at being professionally selfish in a way that I think should be normalized. Yeah.
Ooh, I love that term, professionally selfish. And I think you were talking about this in your episode with Jamila about how like there may be a deeper reason why some of us feel like we can't be professionally selfish. Like, why do we feel loyal to strangers? Like, in essence, right? Like your coworkers, unless you have really deep relationships with them, like they're essentially strangers that you work with on the daily, right? And it's just like, it's something that a lot of us, like let me not speak for other people, but I myself have felt that, right? Like feeling loyal or feeling like you have to be loyal. But when you step back out, you're like, why?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not bad to want to help other people and to be part of a team. It feels good to feel like you are all working toward a vision or a goal, and that you are a great team. And it's even harder when you like your colleagues and you like your manager and it's a good culture. But I think if you're thinking about everyone else and not yourself, then you can find yourself really lost in your career. And one thing that I was good about was always having sort of an outside hustle of my own. So even while I was in my early career in New York, I was working full time. I also had a blog. And I wrote a blog about biking in New York. I don't know if you can even find it anymore, but I wrote a blog about biking. And I had other things kind of going on, and I never took my eye off of my overall career goal. And for me, that blog was crucial because at the time, like I said, I was laid off and I had to take the first job I could get because I had like no savings and I was down to my last penny. And I got a job as an assistant and I was not able to write. And I told myself, I can't let this skill atrophy. So I started to, or is it atrophy? Whatever, start to diminish. So I started my bike riding blog, and that's how I kept my writing skills sharp. And in fact, it was that blog because I would share my work on Facebook and LinkedIn. One of the editors at Business Insider that saw my work reached out to me for a job as a writer there. So even though I was doing good work, I always in the back of my mind was like, am I staying true to like my North Star, like what I want to be doing? And if I can't do it in my 9 to 5, I'm still going to be doing it, outside of it. And yeah, it was really easy to leave that job for the new writing job because it was back on track for me, back to doing what I wanted to do.
That makes a lot of sense. And then like What was your strategy for how long you would stay in one position? Like, was there all right, this has happened, now it's time to start looking?
I mean, now I can articulate it, but when two things were true, I was ready to go. So if I felt I was being underpaid for my value that I was bringing, and I also didn't feel like I had a good, solid career path there, then I would be like a textbook flight risk. I'd be looking. And one of the smartest things I did through my career, and this honestly, I'll acknowledge that when you're a journalist, it's much more common to share your work. Like we write stuff and then we tweet about it and we would post it on LinkedIn. It just came more naturally to us. It doesn't always come naturally to some professionals to share your work, but I was sharing my work with my network, and I'm glad that I did that, because when I was ready to leave Business Insider, for example, I didn't necessarily have this moment where I was like, okay, I'm going to start applying for jobs. I was making sure that people were aware of me and my work. And I actually got someone who reached out to me for the job at Yahoo Finance because they had seen my work. And so that just happened organically and right on time, because I was ready to leave at that point.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think it's something that there may be certain levers, like when these things happen for us, like it's time to go. But the big question here is, how did you then negotiate the salary increase, right? Like, was it something that the job that you were applying for, you knew initially had a bigger salary? Like, were you always looking, like you weren't ever going to go backwards, right? Like, what was your strategy for the actual salary negotiating part?
If my heart wasn't pumping and I was stressed out and my palms weren't sweaty, then I probably wasn't asking for enough. Excuse me. I remember negotiating from Business Insider to Yahoo Finance, where I was making 60 at BI and I knew I wanted 80, which was a pretty significant pay increase. Mm-hmm. And I think I had talked to some colleagues or some peers and kind of settled on that number. And also I knew Yahoo was not like a traditional newspaper. It wasn't at all a newspaper or, a print publication. Yahoo at its core was a tech company. They just happened to have this big internet platform, Yahoo Finance, where I was going to be a journalist. But I was, at the time, Yahoo was doing well. It had a brand new CEO, and I remember they gave everyone Fitbits or something like that, one of those like fitness trackers. And I was like, oh, they got some coins. So I felt more confident going in and saying, I think I don't know if I said 80 or 85 or whatever, but that I settled on that number and I said, that's what I wanted. And, that's what I got.
Oh, do you think your confidence also helped seal the deal?
I mean, confident? I don't know if I was, like I said, I remember that job interview process at Yahoo took forever. It was agonizing. And I remember when I said 80, they were like, oh, and they had to get like special conversations. And
but you didn't back down. You didn't say like, oh, okay, maybe we can do 75, right?
No, I didn't. But I remember I was so stressed. I actually flew home to Georgia for like a weekend just to be with my mom, and it was around September, so it was still warm. And I was like, I just want to go and like decompress. And when I was down in Georgia, I got the call that they were going to send me an offer. But yeah, so I was just as scared as everyone else. It's scary. I don't even try to sugarcoat it. It is really scary to ask for what you're worth, but the payoff is always great. And then, it's worth the risk. You just kind of have to stick to your guns in that way.
Hey, Dream Drivers. Ever since becoming a mom, life has changed for me in so many ways, and I've learned so much about what it takes to be a mother. One of the things I realized early on in this dream driving journey was how important having the right tools, aka diapers, in my toolkit is. When it comes to changing those dirty diapers, for me, it's all about making the smartest choice. I need reliability and quality, and Pampers gives me that. You may save a couple cents on other brands, but will you save time and convenience? Who wants more leaky diapers, more laundry because poop stains are not fun? And better yet, diaper rash? Not me. I don't worry about that with Pampers. There are other things you can save on, but honestly, your baby deserves the Pampers experience. I've sworn by Pampers with my son for the past 2 years. It's gentle on his skin, and I can trust that they can hold up throughout usage. As a busy dream driver already juggling so much, your diapers choice should be easy and worry-free. Make sure you download the Pampers Club app today to start earning free diapers. Dream Drivers, did you know Ford is sharing the inspiring stories of those behind the wheel who are accomplishing their goals, pursuing their dreams, and creating the world they want to live in? Built Ford Proud is highlighting Dee Bryant, a Ford driver who has shown strength in how she's breaking boundaries to create change in her field for all those around her. So Dee is a professional stunt driver who's been featured in over 100 films, movies, and shows. She began riding motorcycles at age 11. And get this, Dee always finds herself gravitating towards Ford vehicles as her personal ride when off screen. In fact, much of her stunt driving training took place in a Ford Mustang. Dee is one of few females and even fewer African-American female stunt drivers in the industry. She constantly battles against sexism, racism, and unfair representation as many productions try to get around hiring female drivers. Dee co-founded the Association of Women Drivers, a stunt driving school where she helps teach other women to stunt drive. She's just one of the many examples that show us dream drivers that Ford drivers come from all types of backgrounds and dream driving journeys. Learn more about Dee Bryant's story at Ford.com/BuiltFordProud. Breaking the mold, strengthening communities, creating change, real stories brought to you by Ford, Built Ford Proud.
What if you are, I don't know if were you ever able to negotiate like promotion salary bumps?
Yeah. Well, let me think. Yeah. So when I was at Business Insider, I started out as a reporter there, and they, and my editor at the time had left, and I hadn't been there super long, but I really pushed for that job. I was like, listen, you're probably going to post this online. You're probably going to look for someone with more experience, but I know I can do this. I know this. And that was my first time getting into personal finance reporting too. But I really pushed for that. And I think my advocating for myself and not waiting for them to have recognize my talent. And, I think too many people are sitting at their cubicles waiting for someone to tap them on the shoulder and say, you do incredible work. And here's all this money. And here's this promotion. I just went for it. I went for it, and they ended up promoting me. And with that, I think it was like a 10K increase. But what I will say, even if you're getting promoted internally, I feel like 9 times out of 10, the biggest pay bumps, they don't happen when you're promoted internally. They happen when you are willing to leave your company and join a new firm. That's just the reality. And I proved that time and again throughout my career.
Before we talk about how you were able to prove that time and again throughout your career, a quick question. What if you're negotiating, or what if when you're making that jump from company to another company and they just tell you, no, this is not the number that we want to go with? Did that ever happen to you? Or was it kind of like, all right, I'll go higher than I want, and maybe they'll come down to a number that I'll accept?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like the first 2 full-time jobs I had, I tried to negotiate and they each said no. Nah, it's not happening. Well, then you have a choice. Do you want to move forward with the job, or do you want to find something else? At the time, my circumstance was I had nowhere else to go. I had zero leverage. So I took it anyway, took that little job. It was like a 10K pay cut from the job I had at the magazine prior. And of course they laid me off, so whatever, but still, I definitely went down in that regard. So it can happen. You can be told no. And I do a lot of career coaching now, and oh my goodness, I got the most exciting call from one of my clients last week. Actually, she's in Texas and she works at a university there, and she had been making like 50K, and she knew she was ready to move on. She was being undervalued, and she had 3 different job interviews going at the same time. And first job offered her 70K. She knew she was worth 110. Second job offered her 90. And she asked each of them to go up, and they each said no. Third job said yes. But imagine for her, like a week of doing these interviews, and she said no to the first job. And that was a 20K salary bump for her, right? 50 to 70, that's not shabby. But she stuck to her guns. She had the confidence and she took the risk. It may not have paid off, but it did pay off. And I was so freaking proud of her. And then in that situation, if you're feeling like, okay, this job offer is just not it, I know I could probably get more. That's why I always recommend having several job interviews going at once, so that you can compare and contrast the different offers and use them interchangeably as leverage. So she could actually go to her first job and say, hey, I actually got a job offer for 90K. So can you beat that offer? And when they said no, she easily, all
right, bye.
Took them out of the running. Bye. Because she had something else going on, right?
Yeah.
And then the timing worked out so that she had the third job offer. And it's stressful, of course, but you kind of have to just deal with that really stressful time and try to make the best decision for yourself.
You said something that I think is interesting, and I think some of us don't know how to do this, is how do you figure out your value and your worth?
Yeah. I'll tell you, the last place you can figure it out is like those websites.
Glassdoor is not the, let me not mention the websites by name. Those websites aren't where you should go.
I'll say it. Glassdoor, Payscale, salary.com, whatever.
Oh, man.
Listen, I mean, they can be helpful. They can be. I mean, you can kind of it's a piece of information, right? But it's like, you don't want to get your news from just one location. I mean, I know a lot of people do, but you want to, I'm a journalist by trade. So you want multiple sources to really get a clear, full, rounded out answer. So that's one way you can find it out, but it's not the strongest way. Hands down, the best way to find your value is to talk to other human beings and talk to people. I always recommend to my clients, find people in your industry at a senior level who are hiring for the types of roles that you are applying for, and ask them, what a reasonable pay range would be for your role, and make sure that they're in your location. Like, don't ask someone. I remember I told my uncle what I was making at Reader's Digest, and he's from Georgia, or no, Business Insider. I told him what I was making, and he lives in Georgia, and he was like, "Oh, damn, 48,000's amazing.
You're rich."
Yeah, you're a big girl. And in his mind, he's like, yeah, but he's older. He's in the South. I was in New York. I really needed like an uncle in New York, in my industry nonetheless. So finding people who can give you that perspective. Yeah. So find folks a couple of things, senior level people who are hiring people at your level. They're great sources. Also, peer-to-peer information is also great. So finding peers of yours who have been recently hired. So if anyone at your company has left, find out where they've gone to and what role they have. And if they've been hired in the last like 6 to 12 months, you want people with like recent information, right? So if they've been hired recently, because they're going to have fresh info. So go to them and see if they'll tell you what they were offered or like a ballpark or whatnot. You have to go get out of your comfort zone and talk to people and ask them about that kind of stuff, because that is hands down the best way to. And it's not just salary. It's also like, did they offer you a sign-on bonus? Did you get equity? How much? What was the negotiation process like? And kind of help, like I said, give you a well-rounded answer for your own value.
As you were talking, the thing that I thought about was, so many of us are scared to just talk about money, right? And I think as Black women especially, it's just something that there's such a stigma, like, oh, don't tell someone what you're making, right? Like, and I think it's so important. Like, we should not be afraid to talk about money, because it really does hold us back a lot of times. And it's funny because I have a friend who would always be like, what would Tom do? Right? You know who Tom is, right? Tom is over there talking about money in his circle. And it's just funny to me because I feel like sometimes, of course, we don't have to act like this exactly, but I think a lot of us sometimes are just thinking that we have to accept things as they are. And one of the things I love about your story, Mandi, is that you had that confidence, and then you had that chutzpah, right? To say, hey, I'm worth this, and this is what I will not settle for less, I really do admire that.
It's also just, I think as a journalist, I was always taught to poke holes in things and to ask questions. Some people are told, oh, okay, well, and it's always from managers too. It's like, okay, well, maybe we'll talk about this during the next promotion round, which is like in 8 months or whatever.
Annual review time, right?
Yeah. And as a journalist, I'm like, but who told you that? Oh, and sometimes they're just kind of making it up. I'm like, there's got to be systems where in the middle of the year, people are getting raises, whether they've got a competing offer or something else happens. Like finding out who's like going even above your manager's head sometimes and trying to figure out, well, who told this person that and what are the rules? I remember one of the last promotions I vied for before launching my own business. I was senior director at a company managing a content team, and I had a really great reputation. I loved my work. My team loved me. It was excellent, but I was kind of getting bored. And I went to my colleague of mine and I said, I want to be a vice president. They just had released, actually, it was so funny because it was right before the pandemic. I came back from maternity leave and I was like, I'm bored. I want to be a vice president. What do I got to do? And it was funny to watch him try to tell me what the process was, because it sounded very like convoluted. And I think out of my own interest as a journalist, and also knowing how opaque some companies have internal promotions processes, how opaque they can be, I wanted to keep pushing. And it almost became beyond just my own career progression. I just wanted them to tell me. I wanted them to tell me what it took, because I wanted to force them to like figure it out. You know, I could tell that they didn't have a system, and I knew by me being a squeaky wheel, I could force some conversations. And I sure did. You know, I found out that they were going to have like recommendations for vice president level in February of the following year. And I asked this colleague who was like my boss's boss, I asked him to give me, I said, like, let's sit down and let's make a roadmap so that when you're going to put my name in for VP, that I have everyone else in the room is going to be like, oh, of course, Mandi is excellent. And so we sat down and we came up with a list of like a strategy for me to position myself. And a lot of it was working more cross-functionally with other teams, because I had a great reputation on my team, but I hadn't yet sort of collaborated with other senior leadership on other teams, and creating bridges for those teams and creating projects that I could spearhead and work with them on. And so I think that's just me being like kind of an annoying journalist at heart, and just kind of wanting, because so many places, they ain't got a plan. They don't have a process, like until someone forces them to have one. Yeah.
Dream drivers, Walgreens knows you need your medications, but sometimes what you really need is a prescription for more time with your family or friends, or just more time to do what you want on a Saturday afternoon. That's why Walgreens offers same-day RX delivery to where you are. So you can get more than just your meds. You can get your prescription to save time at the pharmacy. And when you have pharmacy questions, which let's face it, we all do, Walgreens will be there for you with a helpful 24/7 pharmacy chat. So when you need to know, which med do I take before bed again? Or, is it safe to have a glass of wine with my prescription? You can ask a Walgreens pharmacy expert that question no matter where you are or what time of day it is. And that gives you more than just answers. It gives you your prescription for peace of mind. Delivery is available on eligible prescriptions only. See details at walgreens.com/prescription delivery. This episode of Dreams and Drive is brought to you by McDonald's. All right, so I don't know about y'all, but for me, I have so many different memories of the McDonald's drive-thru experience. So as a kid, I remember always going with my mom and always asking for fries and a Happy Meal, and her just being like, Raina, you got McDonald's money? And I would say, no, but you do. And then as I grew up, one of my biggest memories of the McDonald's drive-thru was when I was actually pregnant with my son, Axel. I had this period where I was obsessed with McFlurries. And so I will always go to the drive-thru and then ask whoever was ringing me up to add some extra Oreos to my Oreo McFlurry, because that is exactly what me and baby needed. All the best nights out ended with a bite from Mickey D's. Everyone's got their own Mickey D's moments, so go on and make more delicious memories.
I love that. Like, don't be afraid to ask those questions. That's the thing I'm going to implement, because like, they're really like, who's telling you no, right? Like, that's what you think. You know, I think the funny thing is like, you know, this is I once got this from someone, you know, this is our best and final offer, right? Well, who said that, right? And who told that person that? So I love that you were using your journalistic background to really help build your career, like from the salary negotiating side. That's amazing. During this time, though, like I know you mentioned, so you quit or you transitioned into entrepreneurship in January 2021, right? June of 2021. Why? Right? You went from 30K to 300,000K, right? Like that's amazing. Like a lot of people would have said, girl, you're crazy, right? You have security.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, it was like a boiling point. It was in my own, I won't say, like I said, I had this strategy to be an entrepreneur, but all signs were just pointing there. And remember what I said about recognizing when I wasn't going to have the freedom to be entrepreneurial at a job in the way that I wanted to, when I started to just get too big for it, like get too ambitious for it. My ideas, I wasn't able to kind of do what I needed to do. And also my creative projects, because my role had gotten so big and I was like, I was managing teams and I had these big senior level positions. There was so little bandwidth for my podcast, for my own personal brand stuff, and I didn't have the time and energy for that at the end of the workday. And I think that's the struggle when you are a 9-to-5 entrepreneur and you've got like a side business or something like Raina, this, you have dreams and drive, right? And you're working 9-to-5. That was me with Brown Ambition. Absolutely. I was sneaking around the office and I would stay late. Typically I would stay late, find a quiet room and record the show, edit on the train on the way home. But I knew I just wasn't going to get to that next level if I was underneath another company's brand. And also it was going to interfere with my ability to really speak my truth because at some level, I was always representing my employer, right? And, we've seen people get burned when they, speak their mind and their company starts to look bad and they're like, oh, you got to go. So yeah, it just made sense for me. And financially, I was secure enough to take that leap of faith I had money in the bank and I had time. Like I knew I didn't have to have necessarily a ton of business lined up immediately, but because I had financial security and financial freedom, I could take that leap for myself. And that's the real lesson for me throughout my career, especially going back 10 years ago when I was laid off. Was I never wanted to be in a position where I had to make a career choice again, based on my desperation financially. Like I spent 15 months wasting my time at a job that I hated with a bad boss because I couldn't afford not to, So for me through my career, I really focused on building wealth so that I had financial freedom and I could take risks. Yes, it was a huge risk. Anytime you're quitting for a new job, it can be a huge risk. And I quit Yahoo Finance to join a startup. And I look back at it now and I'm like, what was I thinking? But it sure did work out. But what if it hadn't? I needed to have a financial safety net so that I could take those big risks and feel confident enough to do that.
And guys, I know we didn't get to talk a lot about, building financial freedom on this podcast, but you have the Brown Ambition podcast that you co-host. I know that Tiffany's kind of on a hiatus, right? But guys, if you want to hear more about Mandi's financial literacy, financial freedom tips, definitely go check out Brown Ambition. But I want to ask you this, like, in a nutshell, what do you think were some of like the biggest investment payoffs or the biggest investments that you made in your financial, I want to say resume, right? Like that really paid off. Things that you can look back at now, like, hey, these 3 things, like if you start small, like it really helps.
You hit it on its head. Start small. So when I was making like $40,000, I opened my first 401k and I barely knew what it was. And I started contributing like the automatic, I think it was like 8 or 10%. And that little baby 401k, she's grown. Like it feels like, and especially now with all this pandemic, everyone's a personal finance expert now and everyone's an investing genius now. And it can feel like you're missing out. But just getting started and not waiting until you're an expert in something was the smartest thing I ever did. And so I opened that little baby 401k and I built that habit of automatically contributing. So automating my investment through my 401k, that's the first step I'll tell anyone working 9-to-5, start doing that now. And then when I got a little bit more savvy, then I could start to increase as my income grew too, I could increase my contributions, and then I could go in and I could be a little bit more selective about what I was investing in. But, initially I invested in something called a target date fund, which is basically like going to the Golden Corral and someone makes a plate for you, which is great because it doesn't take my daddy loves the Golden Corral. It doesn't take a lot of brain power. All you have to do is go in and select the year that you think you're going to retire, and you automatically get a diversified investment portfolio. And it costs a little bit more than if you know a couple of more things and you can pick and choose, but I got started. You know what I mean? So I would just say definitely automating, starting sooner rather than later, and then being willing to pursue higher earnings unapologetically. So my ability to quit, I say I quit my way rich, and I really mean that. I quit 6 or 7 times in 10 years, and I did it thoughtfully with intention. I did not burn bridges. I didn't burn a single bridge. Okay. Actually, some of my first clients, when I went solo and independent last year, were my previous employers. Like,
wow.
it's possible. Like, I'm a Yahoo Finance contributor now. I quit that job in 2016, y'all. I said deuces, and it was fine, Anyway, so my ability to my confidence in quitting and pursuing higher earnings for my own, financial security, that was really key to me building wealth. And that's how I was able to build wealth through my 9 to 5. And I have a whole webinar on this. I'm actually doing one March 2nd. I don't know when it's going to air. Is this going to air before March 2nd?
It may not.
That's fine. It's fine. No, it's totally fine. But if you guys miss it, I do it like every couple of months, but it's a free webinar where I talk about that journey from 70K net worth to 700K net worth. And I did that while working 9 to 5. And I put on this webinar just to prove to people that entrepreneurship is amazing, but you can be entrepreneur. You can take some of those same strategies and apply them to your career and truly build wealth in that way. So that's really the 3 things. You said 3 things, right? Did I get it? Start early, automate, and quit. There you go. Done.
So I think we're at the part of the journey, right? Where you're in this new venture, Mandi Money Media, right? I love your LinkedIn headlines. I was looking at your LinkedIn early today. It's inclusive career and finance expert, career money coach, content team builder and consultant, Brown Ambition podcast. You have a lot of things going on. What is the thing though right now that's challenging, right? Because you talked about some challenges you had throughout your career, but right now, what are you working through and how are you keeping the spirit alive even when things seem a little bit tough or, unsure? Yeah,
I mean, it hit me, I think, at the beginning of this year. Because when I started my business in June, and like I said, I had that financial cushion. So of course I wanted to make money, but I knew it will take a little while to ramp up. And I think at the beginning of this year, I was like, okay, we're going to keep doing this. And it's like I had gotten through those first 6 or 8 months and the new year came and I was like, oh, I'm still going. Life is long. I'm going to have to keep doing this. I think the challenge, and the beautiful thing about the fact that I have my own business now is that I can really be in charge of my schedule, but trying to be most efficient with my schedule. I'm still trying to master that. I have a toddler, and if he's out of school, if he's sick or if they have a COVID exposure or whatever, I'm the one who is going to have to drop everything because my husband still works in the city, so he's going into an office during the week. So for me, it's just I think the challenge is always time and how to best use my time and how to use my time and being more mindful about what I say yes to, so I can plan my schedule and maximize my time. That's a big challenge right now. And I just, I read a book and they were talking about, having a business where it's all about you, which is what my business is. I have the podcast, I've got my career coaching and my group coaching and consulting and all this kind of stuff, but it's all me, when do you transition from that kind of business to a bigger business where you're actually employing people and it has, it's a big deal. And do I want that? And if I do, what would that be? So I'm constantly trying to figure out what's the bigger dream that I haven't even thought of yet. And what's the next level? And just being open to that. Yep.
I love the question of do I want that? Right. And I feel like sometimes there is a pressure to always think of how can I make this bigger? Right. And I think for some people, you may not, this may not be your answer. Right. But you may say, I don't want that. Right. And I think it's something I want listeners to really think about is this is a personal for everyone. And you have to make the right decision for yourself. I was talking with a friend and she was like, I'm quite happy with my one person business as it is right now. Right. I'm making enough, I'm saving enough. And for her, it works. Right. And I just think there's so many different ways to success. And I just love that you're just being honest about the things that you're questioning. What will it look like for me? What is it that I want to do? What are my revenue streams going to be? And I think that's also the beauty of being able to craft your own journey, because you couldn't tell, Yahoo, hey, you need to close down the food section of, there's so much autonomy that you have now. And there's so many possibilities that you're creating. So I think that's really beautiful.
It really is your own journey. At the same time, and through my coaching, I have realized that sometimes we're the ones telling ourselves that we should stop where we are. We're comfortable. It makes sense. We feel stable. a lot of times I'll push and I'll poke and I'll prod my clients to actually explain to me, like, who's telling you that this is it? And why do you think this is it? And couldn't you continue growing, but just do it in a way where you still preserve the things that are of value to you, the things that you value? Because you don't want to, you can easily turn your entrepreneurial thing into a 9 to 5. And I've talked to clients who've been like, I went off to start my own business and now I just feel like I'm doing another 9 to 5. Like I'm working nonstop. And I'm like, why'd you do that to yourself? Because you're your own boss, right? So it's tricky. And I think what's great about whether it's a coach or whether it's just having a peer or a colleague or I talk about with my group, I have a group coaching program called Mandi Moneymakers. And last week, my entire session was about building what I call a personal advisory board. So having other people, mentors, allies, sponsors, whoever you can go to and bounce ideas off of, so that you get feedback and so that they can help you either see something that you have a blind spot for, or kind of challenge you. You know what I mean? Challenge you and help you get to the next level you may not even know was possible. So whether you are working 9 to 5 or you have your own business, don't let yourself get so insulated so that you're the only voice that you're hearing on a day-to-day basis. You need to have other voices through peers, like I said, mentors, whoever, colleagues. Have other voices in the mix, share, open up, and get their insights and help that. Just make sure that you're not the only voice, because sometimes we can really trick ourselves into settling. We have a really really good, we're pretty good at telling ourselves just to stop. It feels safer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And just staying where it's comfortable. Like, I don't want to have to do the work that's going to take me to the next level. I think that's also something too, a lot of us tell ourselves, right? Like we may just not want to do the work that it will require of us. And it's easy. Like, how to exist at the level that you're at right now. So it does take a lot of those conversations need to be had, and those unpacking the whys. But do you know
what work it takes? Like, that's what I challenge. I'm like, well, who told you what it takes to be a consultant or to get sometimes people don't want to ask for promotion. Like, vice president scared the crap out of me, but I interviewed my own peers who I knew who had vice president titles at other firms. And I was like, so what's it like being a vice president? What's required of you? And they actually helped me be not so afraid anymore. So are you telling yourself that it's too challenging, or have you talked to people who've actually done the work, and have they told you what it takes? Because that's what I push back on, is just make sure that you've talked to people and that they can help you figure out. Someone else who's done the work can tell you what it's going to take. And then maybe it's not as scary as you thought.
You know who that person is for me? It's our mutual connection, Gabby. Gabrielle Simpson Gambrell. She was on the podcast too. I forgot the episode, but she's just someone for me that she's been my mentor since my CBS, my college intern days, right? When I was a college intern at CBS. And she has continuously told me, girl, they're making money out here, right? And has been so honest and transparent about her own journey. And I've watched her, go from being a manager at CBS, and now I forgot her exact role now, but right. It's just you have to see examples and talk to people, because you never know. She's a chief communications officer. That is amazing. And it can happen. And there are people who look like us, brown women who are out here doing things, and it can be you too as well. That's something that I love.
Yes. Everyone needs Gabbies. You have to go find your Gabby.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, what's next for Mandi? What is on the horizon? What are you excited about, Mandi?
Ooh, so many things. I mean, I honestly wake up and I'm so excited to check my email, because I feel like every day there's a fun little nugget of a surprise or a new opportunity that comes in. So while I do have some of my business planned out, I have Mandi Moneymakers. I know I'm starting a new cohort. If you want to get on the wait list is getting crazy. I'm so excited. You can go to mandimoney.com and join the wait list. It's an 8-week group coaching, women of color, primarily group coaching, program that I'm offering. So I have the next cohort starting in mid to late March, and I'm graduating my first cohort in early March, which is super exciting. So I've got that part of my business kind of planned out, and I'm a contributor to Yahoo Finance, which is exciting. And there's and I leave room for the beautiful surprises that come throughout the year. the opportunities, hey, you're interested in talking to you about potentially partnering, those kinds of emails. I live for that shit. I love it. But I think what I'm learning is to leave time in my schedule for the things that are, for the opportunities that are being talked about in rooms that I'm not even in, that may find their way to me, and it's fun. It's not for everyone. I get it. Some people don't like that uncertainty, but I kind of dig it, man. It's fun.
And I love just how much you share like on social media and how you're so candid about the journey and you make it fun, right? Like when I'm on your account, it just seems like you're making content that's fun. You also have a content background. We didn't get to talk about that stuff, but I think it's just like I'm invested in seeing like where Mandi goes next. Like you just announced you have your interview with Stacey Abrams, right? Like there's so many cool things going on and I just love how you're sharing it and I'm just so authentic and transparent. So from someone from the outside looking in, it's like I'm invested and I'm rooting for you, girl.
Oh, likewise, Raina. Thank you so much for inviting me to your playground here.
Yes. And, as fellow mamas, we didn't get to talk about motherhood too much either, but I know it's hard and I know that, we're juggling a lot, but I see you and I'm sending you love as well.
Thank God for daycare.
Yes, right. We were just talking about that. Like, listen, you need that time. Like, it is really hard to do it. Everything and also like working from home remotely, like it's tough. So that help is 100% needed. But Mandi, before we close out, you couldn't be a dream driver without your keys to success, right? So tell me 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road.
Oh, Lord. Okay. 3 things you need in your toolkit. You need a sense of humor. I think you said, I love that you're getting the fun and the humor of my content because shit is hard. And there's a lot of challenges, especially when you're an ambitious person. We make things really difficult for ourselves, don't we? That's part of what being ambitious is all about. But having people that you can laugh with and building a community. So number 1 is sense of humor, be able to laugh at yourself. I really don't take myself too seriously. I will put on a pink power suit and do my Bosom of St. John strut and all that kind of thing. But I know that I change shitty diapers in Chinese restaurant bathrooms, in the middle of the day. Like I know that I am a human being. And a lot of stuff is funny, right? So sense of humor is number 1. Support system. So actually asking for help. One of the best things I did during the pandemic was I imported my cousin from Georgia and she moved in with me. And she's 24, she's in school, and she has saved me so many times. When my son's school shut down yesterday for COVID exposure, I would have had a whole day of business gone. But because I had that help, here, I could still make things work. So your support system, and it doesn't have to be your partner if you have a partner, but it can be even neighbors. My neighbors I've gotten to know them so well in the pandemic because, we weren't going anywhere, right? So
yeah.
Building community, and that can be your neighbors, former colleagues. Like there's just way too many women out there being isolated and isolating themselves. Open yourselves up and don't even use the excuse of I'm an introvert, blah, blah, blah. Like put yourself out there, open up to others. Community can open you up for support and also just career advice, career opportunities, all that stuff. So let me see. Sense of humor, community. Oh, goodness. What else do you need in your toolkit? Professional selfishness.
Has gotten you. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Professional selfishness, I would say. Like,
I love that. Yes, yeah. Yes.
I don't want to be one of those moms who gets to go on a talk show and gets a makeover because she's run herself so ragged that everyone feels sorry for her. Like, I don't want to be that mom. I want to take care of myself now before I'm in desperation. So be selfish, whether you're a mom or not a mom, but take care of yourself, put yourself first. It's okay. Doesn't mean that you're selfish in a negative way, but we've got to take care of ourselves. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. You can't be a good colleague, can't be a good partner, good parent, good friend. So just be willing to put yourself first. I'll end with that.
I love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much, Mandi, for coming on Dreams and Drive. Before we end, please let our dream drivers know where they can find you, where they can connect with you online, and just, get into the Mandi Money world.
Yeah. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Mandi Money. You can also just go to my website, Mandi Money. That's Mandi with an I. because I like to make things complicated, mandymoney.com. And yeah, sign up for the wait list for Mandy Moneymakers if you're into that, or you can book me for a one-on-one coaching session. Yeah, I'm out here, and definitely check out Brown Ambition podcast. We are Raina's podcast sisters. I know you've had Tiffany on the show before, which is exciting.
Yes.
Check us out. brownambitionpodcast.com.
Thank you so much, Mandy.
Thanks, Raina. This was fun.
All right, so that's a wrap for episode 301 with Mandi Woodruff-Santos. I hope you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. If you guys enjoyed this episode, you know what to do. Please make sure you're following us across social media. We are Dreams and Drive on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and use that hashtag Dreams and Drive when sharing as well. And if you want to join our online community, The Keys, and get weekly emails delivered to your inbox, right? Just sign up at dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. And if you reach this point in the episode and you're like, wait, I want to hear more episodes. Listen, we have 300 episodes prior to this one that you can go back and enjoy. So I encourage you to subscribe. And I also encourage you to go back and peruse the rest of our audio inventory and hear from over 300 different topics, right? About how you can put your dreams into drive. And if you're somebody with a story that you think could be or is perfect for this show, make sure you sign up at dreamsanddrive.com/pitch to pitch us your story. I want to hear from people with unique dream driving journeys this year. So please, please, please feel free to reach out, and also follow up via email, right? It never hurts. Keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again. Bye, guys.